Welcome back to Inhibition. Today we're going to look at part 2 of our Thursday series breaking down propaganda in the media. Today, MSNBC. Let's see what you got. Alright, welcome back to the channel. So we're going to jump into this topic. Every Thursday I'm releasing a video breaking down propaganda in the media. And so last Thursdays we did the Young Turks. Today we're looking at MSNBC, and we're going to look at some propaganda and show how the media is manipulating and lying to you. So that's what we want to look at right now with MSNBC. Let's jump into this clip.
It has been more than 5 months since Inauguration Day, January 20th, 2021, when Joe Biden took the oath of office and sworn in as our 46th president. And since that day, starting in day one, it has been clear to, I think, everyone, Joe Biden had one key primary job, right? To suppress the coronavirus. He ramped up mass vaccinations, set targets, 160 million adults fully vaccinated, 70% of adults with at least one shot by July 4th. We are close to those goals. Over 148 million adults are now fully vaccinated. 66.5% of adults have received at least one shot. But we are now at a perilous moment. The daily rate of vaccination is slow. The highly infectious Delta variant is spreading. There is still an expectation, understandably, the buck stops with the president, and it is the Biden administration's job to protect people from coast to coast. But also, governance is a collaborative enterprise, particularly in a system like ours with 50 individual states.
Now I want to stop right there and point out, notice how he is trying to shift blame off of Biden onto governors. And of course, we know, and you'll see here in just a moment, he's only going to talk about Republican or GOP governors that are the problem. But he's trying to shift blame from Biden about the handling of the coronavirus and the vaccine to all of the governors, specifically the Republican governors. Now, when it was Trump who was in office, Trump received all the blame. Every failure, everything that went bad, everything that went wrong with the coronavirus, it was Trump's fault. Trump is to blame. Trump is to blame. Yet he sits here and he pivots and he tries to paint it with a nice, lovely stroke. We're hitting close to our goals, and Biden's doing a good job. And while the buck does ultimately stop with him, really it's the governor's fault, specifically the Republican governor. So see how he twists that. Now notice the double standard. That's not what he would say with Trump. If something was happening bad in New York, it wasn't Governor Cuomo's fault when the outbreak was terrible in New York. It was Trump's fault, even though Governor Cuomo was the one who was responsible for the policies that he was enacting in New York. So do you see the double standard? There is a left-wing liberal bias, but it's not just bias. It is propaganda meant to make you believe everything they say and blame everything on the people you don't like politically. Keep listening.
Response to this pandemic should be an all-hands-on-deck situation across the board, across party lines, across ideology, especially now at this key moment with this new threatening variant and the pressing need to get as many people vaccinated as quickly as possible to get us over those thresholds. And yet, a huge part of the governing structure of America is basically checked out. Instead of actually governing, doing this very important thing, a lot of Republicans are busy performing, auditioning, hoping to rise in the party ranks. Just look at what Governors Kristi Noem of South Dakota and Greg Abbott of Texas are up to. Governor Abbott in Texas, you'll remember, started lifting COVID restrictions all the way back in April of 2020, the first state to do so. Now, vaccinations in Texas are not good. They are lagging. Just 48% of people receiving at least one shot. That's not good enough. That's a bad number.
Now, I want to point out, he starts by saying how terrible Texas is because they've only got 48% of the people who've received at least one dose of the vaccine. And he says that's not good enough. That's not a good number. And it's Texas's fault. He's not taking care of business. He's not doing what he's supposed to do. And he even makes the link to the fact that they opened up earlier than any other state. They were kind of one of the first states, along with Georgia, really, that were pushing to open up, and opened up early back in 2020. The funny thing is, he fails to mention that them opening up earlier did not actually cause a giant outbreak that decimated the state. They still performed better than many of the states that locked down, including California, that stayed locked down for extremely long time. But he doesn't bring up those specific numbers because he's trying to make it sound like, oh, Texas is just horrible. It's a hotbed for the virus because it's a Republican governor. And he's trying to make that argument. Now, what he's failing to tell you here with the 48% received at least one dose, and he's saying that's not good enough. Let's listen to what he says a little bit more about the vaccine rate, and then we're going to look at some numbers.
It is as bad as it gets for a big state. The others like California, New York, and Florida are way ahead. And because of their low vaccination rate, Texas is ripe for an outbreak as this variant spreads.
All right, so he says it's worse than New York and California. And as far as that percentage-wise, yes, it's worse as far as the percentage of people vaccinated. But let's look at some additional details. First, what he doesn't tell you is he's only looking at the vaccine percentage, the percentage of people with at least one dose of the vaccine. But he's not looking at any other numbers. He's trying to just pull one number out and pretend that that means Texas is doing worse than all of these other states. And that actually is not the case. When you look here at the actual data and the actual fact, what you find out is that Texas is not doing worse. If you look down at the 7-day average cases, and you look here on the screen, you'll see this is the 7-day cases and deaths. If you look at deaths, California in the last 7 days has an average of 48 deaths in 7 days. 48 COVID deaths. Texas has 23. California, which he praised as having a better number and doing much better with COVID, has over double the number of deaths from COVID in the last 7 days. Now, he also mentioned South Dakota, which you're going to see him mention in just a moment. And if you look down at South Dakota, you got to scroll and find South Dakota. South Dakota ain't at the top of this list. South Dakota's way down here with one COVID death. One, compared to California and New York and all of these other places that he states are doing better. Yet, when you actually look at the number of infections and the number of deaths, they're not. And this is where the propaganda begins. He's manipulating numbers and cherry-picking numbers to present a case to you that is actually false. He's trying to make it sound like Texas is doing worse than places like California for the sole purpose of making it appear that Republicans are handling this bad, when in reality, that's not the case. As a matter of fact, he actually mentioned the states that were doing better with the vaccine number, but it's interesting. There are other states that have a number similar to Texas or worse that he doesn't seem to mention. So why doesn't he mention a state like Louisiana, which is right there by Texas? Louisiana has a rate of 38% of the population has received at least one dose. 38, that is 10 percentage points less than Texas. But he doesn't mention Louisiana. Why? Right, it's a Democrat governor. Or what about Kansas? Kansas is right down here with a 49% rate of at least one dose, and that is ran by a Democrat governor. Or what about Kentucky? 49% with at least one dose, Democrat governor. Or what about Nevada with a 49% rate of at least one dose? Again, Democrat governor. It's interesting, he only points out 2 of the Republican governors and ignores all of these other states with Democrat governors who have a similar rate as Texas. It's propaganda. He also mentions that having this lower number makes you more vulnerable to an outbreak of the Delta variant, which is this variant going around the UK and other places right now. However, that's actually propaganda as well. We do know that the vaccination does help suppress or stop or protect you against the Delta variant, but that does not mean that if you're not vaccinated, that you would not be protected. As a matter of fact, this is from the Huffington Post, which is a very left-leaning source. They explicitly state, after you do some of the studies, people who previously had COVID-19 also appear to be similarly protected against the Delta variant, just like the vaccination. So while we don't actually have studies or data that show all of the numbers related to that, early studies are showing that people who've had COVID previously are just as protected with immunity from the Delta variant as people who are vaccinated. So again, this idea that this lower vaccination number somehow means that you are more likely to get the Delta variant is again just scare tactic and propaganda. Let's listen a little further.
Focusing on that pressing issue, Governor Abbott was busy making a stunty appearance with Donald Trump today, visiting the southern border to tour the former president's unfinished wall. And there's Kristi Noem.
Now, I want to point out he's trying to argue that the reason that the COVID percentage is so low for vaccinations in Texas is because the Governor Abbott, isn't really focusing on COVID or doing anything related to vaccinations. He's actually just too busy going down to the border wall with Trump. And so he's just hanging out with Trump and as if going to a single event on a single day with Trump to deal with the border crisis, which is also a large crisis affecting Texas, to pretend that him dealing with that means he's not doing anything with the virus is propaganda. It's laughable. It's a lie. Governors don't just do one thing. If a governor focuses only on one thing, their state will fall apart. Is he suggesting that in different states where there's different issues, in Illinois, for example, where we have high gun crime violence and issues going on in Chicago, is he stating that the governor of Illinois should only focus on the virus and ignore all the gun deaths? Or should they be doing everything as a governor that is a major issue in their state and working with all the issues? Well, that's exactly what Governor Abbott's doing. He's working with the issue of the border crisis, also dealing with the virus, dealing with infrastructure related to their electrical grid. He's dealing with all kinds of things. That's what a governor does, not just one thing. So pointing out to one event and saying Governor Abbott was at this event, therefore he's not working on COVID, is a lie, and it's propaganda. Let's go a little further and talk about South Dakota.
South Dakota governor, who clearly has her eye on the Republican presidential nomination. She has made her name in the party as the I don't care about COVID governor. Last summer, in the midst of the pandemic, she held a huge 4th of July event with Donald Trump at Mount Rushmore. She let the Sturgis motorcycle rally in August go ahead, which brought 460,000 people from all over the country, and according to a number of experts, kicked off an outbreak.
Now, again, lies. First of all, if you look at the South Dakota numbers for COVID, South Dakota performed as one of the best states in the country when it comes to COVID. So again, he can't look at actual numbers, so he looks at a single event and tries to manipulate you to think that because she allowed this motorcycle rally, that must be that she doesn't care about COVID. When in reality, that's not what the actual numbers show, and that's not what the facts show. Snopes itself, which Snopes, is a fact-checking site, and I can promise you they are not pro-Trump or pro-right-leaning. Snopes labeled this idea. There was this rumor, the experts were saying it resulted in 250,000 COVID cases and this big outbreak. This was actually unproven, according to Snopes. Never proven. And yes, there was a report released by the IZA Institute of Labor Economics that linked about 260 or 250,000 coronavirus cases to the Sturgis motorcycle rally. However, that was a nonprofit research institute supported by some kind of foundation, and they did publish a paper, but it was a non-peer-reviewed paper, and the figures here are estimates from a non-peer-reviewed paper, have not been distributed or demonstrated definitively, and statisticians and epidemiologists have indicated the study had some flaws, that it's not accurate. And if you can look here on did the Sturgis rally actually produce these numbers of cases, the study was published by IZA Institute of Labor Economics, claimed to have compared anonymized cell phone data from in and around the Sturgis area during the 10-day rally, which saw over 500,000 attendees, and compared the data to the rate of new COVID cases in the county that hosted the rally. But a recent report published by Jennifer Dowd, Deputy Director of the Leverhulme Center for Demographic Science at the University of Oxford, says the 250,000 estimate is at best an absolute worst case scenario number, and the actual number of infections may only be in the hundreds. with contact tracing efforts just showing just over 250 cases in the 12 states. So it is not 250,000. It didn't lead to a massive outbreak. That is a disproven complete lie.
For a time, Governor Noem's state had one of the highest case and death rates in the entire country. And just like Texas, South Dakota's vaccination rate is still low. 50% of residents receiving at least one dose. Again, not good enough.
Now, he says that's not good enough, but again, I've already proven and shown that there are tons of Democrat states that have a lower number than South Dakota. And when it comes to the number of deaths or cases in the state, South Dakota is performing better than a large number of states in the country.
It will get people killed to not get those numbers higher. But Kristi Noem is more concerned with not being left out of Donald Trump and Governor Abbott's fun at the border. Hey guys, can I get in? Yesterday she announced she's deploying National Guard troops from South Dakota to Texas at Abbott's request. Get this, funded by a private donation from a billionaire Republican donor who has donated over $500,000 to Donald Trump in the last 2 years. I did not even know, I will confess, it was possible or legal to privately fund the movement of American troops. But of course this makes sense when you think about the different prisms through which governing performance is evaluated. We all understand that Joe Biden's job is to get the...
Now I wanted you to notice what he just did. He said, I didn't even know that that was legal or a possibility to do that. Now it is. And if he was actually a good journalist who wasn't spreading propaganda, he would have pointed out to you the law and how that is legal, what she did, and looked into the actual details rather than just a few quick talking points. But he throws that phrase, now I didn't even know that was legal, and he's trying to paint a picture as if she did something illegal when she didn't. But he's wording it in such a way where he's not saying she did something illegal, but he's planting that seed. This is nothing more than propaganda.
The country running again, to keep people safe and healthy and get America on its feet. And Republicans understand their job is to keep feeding performative nonsense to a base with an insatiable and apparently depthless appetite for it.
Now, he calls Republicans depthless and that it's just performative art, when in reality, what he is doing on this broadcast is performative art. And he's thinking that his audience is so stupid they won't look at the facts and the numbers. And the sad thing is, many won't. But it's nothing more than propaganda. And he's engaging in performative art while these Republican states are taking care of actual people and saving lives. Unfortunately, MSNBC is filled with propaganda, and this is just one case. Thank you so much for joining me today. If you like this video, hit that subscribe button, hit the notification bell so you don't miss another video. We'll have a new video like this every Thursday, plus other videos on Tuesdays and Saturdays. Hit the like button, comment down below. Until next time.
Thanks so much for watching. For more videos, click subscribe and hit that notification bell. And if you enjoyed the video, click that like button. See you next time.